Keep going.
Okay, not yet. So it is key to understand that they are a corporation, and in order to have control over us, they had to create an artificial entity, also known as a corporation, to extend their power onto the flesh and blood man. And then when we sign these adhesion contracts that are not revealing the true nature of the bindingness of the contract, this is how we end up getting into submission into these corporations. I want everyone, when they go home tonight, to take their checkbook, to look at the signature line on the checkbook where you may have thought was just a line. And if you take a magnifying glass and turn it upside down, you will see that it says authorized rep, all across the signature line. Because you, the flesh and blood person, are actually the authorized rep for the straw man, unbeknownst to you. So also through the birth certificate, through the 14th Amendment, that is the beginning of the creation of the U.S. citizen. U.S. citizen, as we've been taught to believe, is also the straw man, part of the corporate fiction. And we need to understand how this came into creation. Back in June 11th, 1878, which is the real birth date of the corporation of the U.S. This is why a lot of astrologers try to do a chart for the U.S. and they can't read it because they're using the July 4th date, which is the inception of the Constitution. But we're not under that. We've long been under that. That was part of the Republic. So we need to know, as Brother Phil was saying, we were in a republic and they slowly moved us into a democracy and into a whole corporate structure. And so it is important, if we're thinking about freedom, that we have to separate ourselves from the corporate fiction and the flesh and blood person. Also in 1933, we had what was known as the New Deal. This is when the whole corporate fiction began. It was already, the groundwork was already laid out in the 14th Amendment, where it's the beginning. You know, we have thought that that meant freedom and the slaves. Incorrect. That is the beginning of creating a U.S. citizen. Prior to that, there was no such thing as a U.S. citizen. A U.S. citizen is only a corporate fiction that exists within the matrix. You know, just like African Americans. This is why we will never, ever get reparations calling ourselves African American, because it's a fiction of law. It does not exist. You know, what are you going to say? Right. So in 1933, you had the whole collapse of the economy. And that's when FDR, he was president. And, you know, we've all heard in history class of the New Deal program. And, you know, it was sold to us that he resurrected the country from bankruptcy and he saved the day. But that is at the point where he began and sold the entire country into bankruptcy. It was bankrupt in June 11th, 1878, and with a country or a corporation, well, with an individual person, bankruptcy lasts for 7 years. With a corporation, it lasts for 70. So it had to be redone in 33, which was the whole point of FDR. You know, as I say, the real deal of the New Deal, it was a raw deal. So this is when he created the Maternity Act, and he made it mandatory that everyone have birth certificates upon the birth of a child. And so with the birth certificate, as I said earlier, they placed a bond on that birth certificate and they sold that bond to the international bankers. The international bankers owns everyone that is a straw man. If you haven't separated yourself from your straw man, then you are the video was saying, state property, a ward of the state. And basically, they're moving in to collect on their assets. Through the creation of the birth certificate, they also removed all the lawful money. The Constitution says the only lawful money is gold and silver. And through the removal of gold and silver, that placed them out of alignment with the Constitution, and it made them a de facto illegal government. And this is how they came about with ferns, or Federal Reserve notes, which is an illegal form of money. But however, to protect themselves and to have what's known as plausible deniability, in case any of us woke up to realize that we're using illegal money according to our very Constitution, they erected a plan known as HJR 192. So they had everyone bring in all their gold. You had a certain amount of days to go to the bank and bring in all of your gold and silver. And then we began the use of ferns, Federal Reserve notes, which are currently not backed by anything. This is money that we're all striving and killing ourselves for, is nothing more than another debt instrument. It only has value because it's perceived to have value. And this is why they're panicking with the Homeland Security and all of these different things, because as people wake up, they will realize that these ferns that we've been using is useless. It's another debt instrument, and it is not backed by anything. So with the creation of HJR 192, it's set up where the sovereigns would be able to discharge all their debts, public and private, by using their exemptions. As I explained to everyone earlier, the exemptions are the numbers on the back of your Social Security card. Unfortunately, it has taken us at least 70 years from back then to figure out how to tap into your exemptions, because there was never any instructions or any information as to how to use your exemptions. Only major corporations basically have been tapping into and accessing your exemptions, A, because you haven't claimed it, and it's considered a bandit property. So in this HJR 192, there was a remedy so that should the people ever confront the government for treason by not using lawful forms of currency, they had a plausible deniability. They're like, well, we gave you all HJR 192 to discharge your debt, but, you know, if you never figured it out, that's, you know, your problem, your concern. So this is basically how they covered themselves to introduce this fictitious form of money. Now, we have to also understand one of the things we've never been taught in this Prussian school system is how to navigate commerce. And I would say that as melanin-dominant people, we're probably the least sophisticated in understanding this current system of how they're navigating in the commercial world. Thus, it's a reflection in the, you know, lack of businesses and schools and different things that we have, because they're underlying rules that were never shared or we were never exposed to. And one of the key things is that we have to keep in mind that the U.S. corporation is under a bankruptcy. And under a bankruptcy, all the commercial rules change. It's actually the reverse of everything you've been taught. And this is one of the reasons why we've had so much difficulty.